here. Welcome everybody to this November 12th webinar, the Culture Mastery webinar on global success strategies. And I will minimize my mugshot so you can actually see some of the slides, but you will see me pointing here and there. So what are we here for today? Success strategies. And the success strategy that is most relevant in my book, in our book, is the ability to communicate efficiently and effectively in light of cultural differences. And we have another hello from Brazil. Oh, well, bom dia. So let's start with communication strategy number one, self-awareness. I think if you want to be successful in global business in any regard, before you can really begin to understand how other cultures operate, how other cultures see the world and solve problems or go about resolving conflicts, unless you know who you are, unless you know what your mode of communication, your preferred mode of communication is, unless you know your own default settings, it will be hard to compare your style to that of others. So number one strategy is know thyself, is self-awareness. How do you gain that self-awareness? I'm moving myself around here because I'm having fun with this. I hope you like this as well and it's not confusing to you. But hey, just if you haven't checked this out yet in Zoom, there is a new function that does that. I'm totally in love with this. Let me know if you like it as well or if it's totally annoying you. So I'm opening an informal poll here. Let me know in the chat. So know thyself. The self-awareness, how does that come about? How do you create self-awareness? There are multiple paths that people have successfully taken over the years. We use a methodology that has been around for many, many years. It's called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It has often gotten a bad reputation because some people misuse it as a manipulative psychological method. I have nothing to do with that, and I want nothing to do with that. However, we have learned in our practice that using NLP methodologies allows us to understand ourselves better and allows us to understand how we operate better. We combine that with a personality profiling instrument called Codebreaker Bank, and I'll tell you a little bit more about this as we progress. So we have a personality profile and we're using NLP basics or NLP techniques to help first of all understand ourselves better and then work with clients to help them find the path to self-awareness. What is it that is my preferred way of acting? We can add to that a cultural profile. Typically, we work with GlobeSmart, and you will see that later in the slides how we apply that with our clients. So basically, three tools that we have in our toolbox to create that, and these tools also serve a next step, the step of recognizing other people's operational system, how other people see the world. So this is something for a lot of people that has become quite difficult to apply to themselves, especially in those, well, let's say polarized environments in which many of us live here. So I see a lot of people here in North America. We have somebody from Brazil, from Germany as well. All of these locations where polarization of the public discourse has become very abundant. Here in the United States, where I'm based, we think we finished an election process. We don't know if it's truly finished. We'll find out soon. Yes, hello, Marco. Hello back to Belgium. So more countries joining us. I love it. So respecting other people's view of the world is the next step, right? How do you become accepting of other worldviews? Well, one step is to recognize that nothing other people do has anything to do with you. It does not make your worldview wrong. It tells you about their way of operating. It is a hard process to maintain. I think it is a continuous practice. It is a daily practice for me. I am often confronted with worldviews that are diametrically opposed to mine. As I said, I live in the United States. I'm not from this country. I was born and raised in Germany, and we have several Germans here on this webinar, so willkommen, y'all. So I'm confronted with this on a daily basis. There's people around me in my immediate neighborhood that have different worldviews than I do, yet coming to a mutual understanding on the basics is something that I recognize is the only way forward, is the most successful approach to this. So respecting other worldviews, what I said earlier with NLP and personality profiling, once we understand our own model of the world, once we understand how we create our worldview, it becomes easier to recognize how other people create their worldview. Because once we go through that process of self-discovery, we recognize that our model, the way we see the world, is not the only one. There are multiple ways to look at things, and the self-discovery will be a powerful tool to come to terms with other people's worldviews. And my favorite strategy in accepting worldviews that do not align with mine is to remind myself that in general, people operate with a positive intention. I used the word presume. I could have paraphrased it, assume or expect. Either way, it is a loaded verb. To presume, to assume, to propose, to expect a certain thing from somebody else is loaded because it comes with the potential of disappointment. If I'm presuming that somebody does something that I would like or that I would expect, and then they don't do it, then that leaves the door open for disappointment and eventually resentment. So I don't want you to go down that route. However, I want to invite you to look at it this way, that people rarely act with a negative outcome for themselves in mind. So everything that we do, everything that I do, and I suspect it's the same for you, everything that you do, every action you take, every behavior you act out, you do that with the intention of having a positive outcome, of having a result that is favoring you and ideally favoring those that you cooperate with. So people typically, unless they have a psychological disorder or they have other, well, if they're clinically ill maybe, or if they're serial killers and terrorists, then the intent may not be positive. But one might even argue that somebody who does something that hurts somebody else or that is not delivering positive outcomes for everybody, in their mind, in their model of the world, for them, that may be the positive intent. We may not like it. However, that's their positive intent. So I understand that this can be controversial, but overall, in many global business interactions, when you are confronted with behavior that you don't like or that is unknown, unfamiliar, or uncommon to you, it's probably good to remind yourself that whatever that person is doing, they're doing it with a positive outcome in mind. So our job as the recipient of that behavior becomes to be detectives. What could possibly be that person's positive intention? Because obviously I don't recognize it immediately. So let's find out. Any idea? I'm going to pose that as a question to all of you. Put an answer in the chat box. How do you find out? If you're uncertain, how do you find out what people's positive intent could be? Let me know in the chat box if you have an idea. I'll give you an answer down the road. But I have a favorite way, and maybe some of you already know the answer as well. Next strategy: listen to relate and not to respond. Now, this is a favorite that I learned from my wife. My wife, Brigitte, she teaches this model with her coaching clients. Listening to relate, not to respond. In many Western cultures, and there are a lot of us on this session here are apparently from what I would call a Western culture. The listening process involves already a start to fabricate an answer. So many of us listen with a desire to put our worldview against that of which we just heard. So that is a human response. This is how we are wired. This is how we are trained in the educational system. However, listening without responding, listening to really let what the other person is telling us sink in, give some pause to digest it, that will create the relationship part. David is posting in the chat box, they aren't lying, they're just trying to maintain social equanimity and not offend with an uncomfortable truth. All right, thank you for that comment. That's a good one to consider. So, listening to relate, not to respond. Also, a daily practice, not an easy one. It's a knee jerk reaction. Somebody tells you something that you may agree or disagree with, or maybe you have an idea to put on top of that, and it's already bubbling inside of you, and you want to throw it at them because you want to add to the conversation. And I need to remind myself of that very often, to just shut up for a second and let what the other person is telling me sink in, and maybe let it echo in my mind a little bit whether I really understood everything that was sent to me. There is this old phrase by the Irish playwright and philosopher George Bernard Shaw, who said, the problem with communication is the assumption that it actually happened. So sometimes we think we have sender and receiver in unison, and that what somebody sent was received by the other person in the way it was intended. That isn't, unfortunately, always the case. So listening to relate, not to respond, can be a method to create rapport, to create commonality, and to create connection with people who think differently, who see the world differently than we do. Now, here's a big one that is true for many of us in that grew up in cultures where we are trained not to make mistakes, where, or at least where we are trained not to portray our mistakes out in public. I told you that I was raised in Germany. The way I was educated, failing in public wasn't something that felt good. It actually made me feel pretty bad, and I felt that I'm losing credibility with my peers or counterparts. So whenever I experienced something that I would consider as failure, it was almost shame and guilt, almost depending on how big my mistake was, that I began feeling. Now, North American culture has taught me something, and this is this phrase here: failure. It's not failure; it is feedback. It is my environment is giving me a response that what I did not lead to success. It did not lead to my desired outcome. So that doesn't mean that I failed. My environment only gave me feedback. Hey, this approach was not successful, so go back and try again. Now, for some of you, this may be very easy because this is how you were raised. In many cultures, failure is something that is difficult to handle, or negative feedback is something that is difficult to handle for many. So I'm not saying this is an easy strategy to apply. However, with our training, especially with the NLP portion of our trainings, we help our clients to recognize how they can reframe the experience of a failure into something constructive that will lead to a re-engagement, that will lead to a new action loop that will give them a new chance at getting it right. So failure versus feedback is a balance that we can affect, depending on where people were raised in the world, which cultural wiring they have. They may be very comfortable with the concept of feedback as being neutral. Some of them may actually see it as something negative, and we can work on that. So that is something that we do with our coaching clients, and those of our clients who choose to go down the NLP path with us. Pace yourself is one of the other strategies that I always recommend. You will not succeed immediately. It will take time to build connection with people who are different from you. It will take time to establish your credibility with people who have a different worldview and a different perspective on life than you do. And when I say pace yourself, I'm using it also in the sense of, again, NLP. There's this concept of pacing and leading, and we'll go more through this in our in-depth training program on the success strategies. But pacing and leading is a model in NLP that is a rapport building measure. So in order to build connection, in order to build commonality with other people, we need to build rapport. We need to create, I would say, similar energy frequency levels between people. And we can easily accomplish that by pacing the other person. And pacing means I am listening to the way they talk. I'm maybe adjusting my speed of talk. I'm adjusting the volume or the intonation of my voice to theirs. I'm actually adjusting my body language to theirs. I'm not mimicking or copying them, but I'm adjusting. If somebody is choosing to stand closer to me, even in COVID times, hopefully with a mask, um, if we're standing closer to each other, then I allow that to happen because I might recognize this is a person that needs more physical proximity. Others need more distance. Pace yourself, adjust your nonverbals to that of the other person. That could mean that you're using similar phrases. You hear somebody repeatedly use certain language patterns. As you recognize that, you can throw those language patterns back at them. That is called rapport building. That is called pacing. You pace yourself to go in the same pace as the other person. And as you do that, your energy levels align and magically trust and rapport happens. So as you learn how to pace yourself and to pace others, you'll recognize that what you thought is a gap, a cultural gap between people, may be easier or will be easier to close. Next strategy: check in. Not necessarily at the airport. Maybe some of you are flying again. Kudos to you. What I mean is check in with yourself and check in with the conversation that you're having. Is the person that you're pacing, remember, are they still in rapport with you? Are they still listening? Is there still relating going on? Are you still listening to them? Have you checked out? Are you already putting your model of the world against theirs without saying it out loud? And are you already making your calculations to respond to them? Are you? I know I've done that and I catch myself doing that. So be honest with yourself, check in with yourself. Are you following the steps? And here's a big one, at least for me, because I come from a culture that communicates very directly. And there's many other cultures who prefer direct or low context form of communication. So you want to scan for that. You want to make sure that you recognize whether your counterparts are really straightforward and blunt in their communicative style, or whether they are a little more vague, or whether they leave room for interpretation, or maybe they do not give you all the details. So directness levels is an important measure of recognizing different cultures, or reconciling different behavioral preferences. Germans, Dutchies, I think we have somebody joining us from the Netherlands here today. Um, the Dutch, the Germans, Israelis, Russians, those are amongst the most direct communicators. And on the other end of the spectrum, you'll have people from certain parts of South America, Africa. Many Asian cultures tend to be very high context, meaning indirect communicators, and you will not always receive the full message verbally. Now, for those of us who are used to direct communication and explicit communication, it is important to recognize that indirect communicators send message or make meaning not only through their words. There is a lot communicated through nonverbal cues. And this is something that can be trained. This is something that we teach and that can be learned. How do I recognize how people communicate without their words? How can I recognize what that means? How can I learn to communicate with nonverbals more efficiently? So, important step in that process. Now, and here's my answer to the question that I asked earlier. How can you find out what people's true intentions are? How can I find out what it is they're striving for? It is asking quality questions. There's an axiom, there's a teaching, I want to call it dogma, but I think axiom is the word that comes to mind here, that we teach in our classes. He or she who asks the highest quality questions controls the situation. So it's easier for us to make blanket statements. It's easier for us to share our knowledge, our expertise, our wisdom in statement sentences, as I am doing right here, right now. I'm being guilty as charged. Those of us who want to find out how other people create their model of the world, those of us who want to find out how people make meaning in their cultural context, if we want to find that out, we need to ask questions. Now, I've often been asked in training programs, and I've been challenged with this by fellow trainers, say, well, there are certain questions you cannot ask, and you shouldn't be doing that. And I will agree to a certain extent, that is true. Certain cultural context may make it hard for us to ask certain questions. However, my mantra, and it has served me well over years, is if we ask questions that come from a place of genuine curiosity and that come without judgment, then almost every question is legitimate, and almost every question will be met with um, not necessarily open arms, but with an open mind. So keep that in mind. If you ask questions that come loaded with judgment, well, why did you do it that way? That would not be a quality question. That would be a question that comes with an accusatory tone, right? But if you ask a question that comes from a place of curiosity, hey, I see you did it this way. I'm curious, what specifically made you decide to do it this way? I would like to find out. Maybe I can learn something new. That's a different question, right? So she or he with the best quality questions will have the best results. Mind your laughing matters. What I mean with this is recognize and remember that humor doesn't always translate well across cultures. I think I'm hilarious. My kids tell me otherwise. I try to prove them wrong every time. Mind the laughing matters means that whatever your culture, whatever your behavioral context considers to be humorous, may not be funny to people from other cultures. In Western cultures, especially North American cultures, humor is often used as a element of style to diffuse a charge in the room or to diffuse tension. We make light of a situation by being humorous or making a pun or um, making a tongue-in-cheek, elbow-rubbing kind of statement that will work within your cultural context. Outside of it, it may fall flat. Happened to me many times. I made jokes in front of multicultural audiences. Half of the room laughed. A third of the room laughed because they thought they needed to laugh because the other part of the room was laughing, but I could sense from their facial expression they didn't know why they were laughing. And the rest of the room was dead silent and was looking at each other like, what is going on? What did this man just do? So be careful before you approach humor as your element of style. Find out whether you know, or you want to make sure how well you understand the cultural context of your audience, whether humor will be the weapon of choice here. Also, mind your emotions. When I say mind your emotions, I mean mind your body language. I explained that earlier. You can read from other people's body language, but you also want to be mindful of yours. So if I am communicating with people from cultures who are more expressive in their body language, I try to match that. If I'm communicating with people who are a little bit more stoic in their body language, then I will, you can't see this right now, but I'll put my hands in my pockets, or I will cross them behind my back, or maybe I will cross my hands in front of my chest in order to prevent myself from getting too agitated. But body motions or body language can take many shapes and forms. That could be you're playing with your hair or scratching your face or, God forbid, picking your nose. Um, it could be your smiles. It could be your frowns. In some cultures, smiling at people that we don't know well is perceived as misleading, or even, well, it certainly is perceived as unusual, and you might not create the rapport with the person from the other culture if you're going in with your default setting of body language. So the when I say mind your emotions, observe the body language in the room, observe how your counterpart is creating message, is sending communication without words, and again, pace them. Remember what I said earlier. One of the superpowers, if not the superpower, in any intercultural interaction is vulnerability. This is a tough one. This was a tough one for me to accept. I am a male. I'm a male of a certain generation, and I was raised to not show emotions. I was raised to not show my weakness. And those of you who read Dr. Brene Brown, or maybe you've seen her TED Talks, or the other talks that she's given, she's a champion of vulnerability as a superpower, and I can only agree. Especially in intercultural interaction, when we are not sure whether our behavior resonates with that of our counterpart, where we don't know if we did make a mistake, where we don't know, is the is the person that I'm communicating with, are they giving me open feedback? Will they let me know if I made a mistake? It's hard to find out in the beginning. So it's easy to see the other person maybe as hiding something or misleading or not being quote unquote honest with me. So it's easy to push blame or point blame at somebody else. Being vulnerable means that you recognize that you may have made a mistake, or that you may have had a shortcoming in building the connection. So being okay with the fact that we're not perfect. All of us are human beings. We're imperfectly perfect the way we are. We screw up. I screwed up on this webinar already. You may have noticed it, you may have not. I own it. That's who I am. I'm made with a bunch of flaws. Try to fix them over a lifetime. Haven't succeeded yet. There's still a few that I'm working on. So knowing that we all make mistakes, owning up to them, will buy you credit. It will buy you the credit of the person who might think that you're not normal, you're unfamiliar, uncommon, unknown, and I don't know this person, why are they behaving this weird, strange way? But if you own up to your vulnerability, if you say, hey, I see that I may have done something wrong here, that I may have misunderstood, can you help me make sense of this? Would you let me know how I can act or react better in this situation? That is a superpower and not a weakness. So these are my 12 strategies. I have a bunch of more, but we only have limited time on a webinar. So in order to get it right globally, we've extended or expanded this. So I decided to provide a live online training. We're going to do 3 hours together. So those of you who would like to learn more about this, I want to see it in the chat right now. Let me know. Write in the chat, I want to know more, or tell me more. There is going to be a training. Well, first of all, I should know my slides better, right? So some of these success strategies I compiled in an ebook. It's called A Dozen Tips for Efficient Communication Across Cultures. Use this link. Um, Danielle, I see you. Mahesh, I see you as well. Thank you. You can download this ebook for free. Just follow this link, and I will send you the link in the follow-up email. So If you can't write it down right now, don't worry about it. I will send you the book, the link to the ebook in our follow-up email. But we're going to have a training. We're going to have a live online training on IceQ. That's a term that we coined for our training programs. IceQ is the combination of IQ, CQ, and EQ. IQ is your factual subject matter intelligence. CQ is your cultural intelligence, and EQ is your emotional intelligence. The three together are the power skills for global success. So we're going to do a 3 hour, 2 times 90 minutes, 2 sessions. One is dedicated. The first session is dedicated. Well, I'll show you what's in there. It's easy. I'm going to put the link here in the chat box. So here's the link for the training. Go to the chat. You'll see the link that you see across the slide here. This one right above my head. I'm going to navigate to it. I'm going to use this tool and make fun of myself here. So this link that you see right here, I put it in the chat box. So you should be able to see it and click on it. It'll take you to this website that you see right here now. So 2 times 90 minutes. And what you'll get is session one will focus on cultural intelligence. So we'll dig into what is that. And session two will focus on emotional intelligence. And as the cultural intelligence piece, you will get your GlobeSmart profile. So this is, we've built this into the price of the program. So your investment includes the GlobeSmart profile, which you will get for 6 months, which is an awesome deal. So you'll have access to your cultural profile and we'll teach you in the program. GlobeSmart is an enormous tool with a lot of depth and a lot of breadth. You'll love it. So we included that in the live online training. You also get your personality profile. So we'll do your bank code breaker, and you'll get that ahead of time. So we'll crack your cultural code and your personality code. Remember, know thyself first, and then you can compare to others. You'll get all the powerful instruments that we teach our clients. And we'll give you a brief introduction to NLP. So what I mentioned earlier today, we'll pack that into the emotional intelligence piece. So I'll show you some of the basic tools of NLP. You will love it because they're totally underrated and most people don't teach it like we do. We package it in with the cultural piece. So you may find NLP elsewhere, but not in the combination with cultural intelligence. You'll see those gears going into each other. That's when it clicks. That's going to be some magic. So you have a choice whether you want to be in this. I had to do this. One of my mentors keeps preaching about blue ocean strategy. So I'm sitting here in the blue ocean, right? The blue ocean is where there are no sharks. The sharks are over there where where the water is red, right? So you want to be where the water is blue and there's no sharks eating you up. So that's the part of the ocean where you adapt and apply your IceQ, where you adapt your learnings. Or you can be in the red water and you can insist on doing it the way you've always done it in your native culture. Have fun with it abroad or in an international context. I'm only halfway joking about this. So this is how you find it. Um, Link is in the chat box. Did I miss something? No, this is the last slide. So my ugly face again, email and phone number if you want to reach out to me aside from today. And we have 6 more minutes until we need to close it out. We can close early, but if there are open questions, I want to give you a chance to address them now. So I see Danielle says she wants to know more. Mahesh says want to know more. Sabine, very interested. Marco, thank you very much. Pilar wants to know more. So some of you are already interested. I'm happy to hear that. Oh, I didn't give you the date yet. This training will be on December 1st and 3rd. So this will be, well, it says here dates to be determined on this slide because I didn't update it yet, but we defined the dates. So as you go to the link, it'll show you on the website, we'll have session 1 on December 1st and session 2 on December 3rd. So it's 90 minutes each, and you'll have homework between the two. I'll make you work. So there's going to be interaction and you'll do homework with each other. So this isn't just live online. This is also offline working with each other. So you'll get to work maybe in pairs or in triads. I'm haven't decided yet how I'm going to split you up, but this is going to be the next best thing rather than having a classroom style training, which, as you all know, these days can be a bit challenging. And plus, we can do this across time zones and geography. So we have people on multiple continents here, at least three, I see. So you'll be able to collaborate internationally and actually put it into practice. Isn't that marvelous? I'm excited for you and with you. So if you don't have any more questions, then I'd say we close it out, and I'm going to give you a couple more seconds to type them in, or you can raise your hand if you are a slow typer or you don't want to type. Let me know. There is Sabine is raising her hand. Let me see, Sabine, if I can give you the microphone. I'm going to say allow to talk. Sabine, I think you need to
Hello,
unmute
can you
yourself.
hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
And
Can
I
you hear
think
me?
we're having the same problem that I had before. Probably the participants can hear you, but I cannot. For some reason, it is not allowing me to hear you. Um, I'm very sorry, Sabine. Would you be so kind to put your question in the chat box or in the Q&A? For some reason, I'm unable to hear you. Mary Beth says, thank you. Hope we can connect soon. Excellent. Nikki says, yes. Wilhelmina, very useful. Stay safe, everyone. Yes, Nikki, I agree. Sabina says, you can't hear me. No, I can't. Regarding the vulnerability, how in a virtual session? Yes, good question, Sabina. How can you be vulnerable in a virtual session? Well, um, this is something that I would like to discuss in the open group in the training. I want to hear all of your suggestions around this. My first thoughts around it, how can you be vulnerable in a virtual session, is I hope I was modeling it at least in parts here today. You can be yourself. You can be not the rehearsed person that was trained to give a presentation at the proper time and with the tie all the way to the top and be very polished. I am right now, I am as raw as I am with my family members and with my friends and with my clients. So being yourself is a start to being vulnerable. That means you will say stupid stuff or mispronounce certain words. English is not my first language. How many times have I mispronounced stuff? That happens. Be okay with it. And know, as you're talking or as you're making yourself seen and heard and felt, others are looking at you and probably impressed by the fact that you're taking the mic or that you're stepping up to the plate. It I'm not saying for me it takes a lot of courage to do a webinar. I've done these many times before, but I remember the first time I gave a webinar, I almost pooped my pants, forgive my directness. I was nervous and jittery, and it didn't feel good because I felt I was imperfect and I didn't do it right. So showing yourself and being okay with the fact that it's not always going to be super polished and perfect, especially via these technological tools that we all have learned over the past 6, 8 months how we use them. And some of us are still learning it. I know I'm still learning how to use this properly. We'll make mistakes. It's okay. And knowing that other people are making mistakes on their end as well will give us the ability to accept that none of us are perfect. But we'll talk more about this in our live training around, especially about the emotional intelligence part. So excellent question, Sabine. Thank you for speaking it out or typing it out. And again, apologies for my technical ineptness to actually listen to it. So next time when we meet again in this training, we will be not on a webinar setting, we will be on a closed Zoom meeting setting with all the breakouts and all the funny stuff we can do there. All right, I see you got my answer. 3 exclamation points. I'm loving it. Mahesh is asking the investment. That's a excellent question. You see it here. It's 197 US dollars, and that's for the entire training. The link will lead you to the website where it's broken down, and you can actually purchase your seat right there off of the website. So it's super easy. So it's I mean, 3 hours for 197, and it's including the two assessments, right? It's including the bank codebreaker assessment, the personality profile, and it's including the Globe Smart. So this is a steal. This is my pre-Thanksgiving saying thanks to the community deal, right? So this is, I think, a very, very competitive investment, if you get my drift. So feel free to send me questions after this. Watch out for your inbox. Email will come from at the Culture Mastery, just like you signed up. I'm suspecting you'll get the feedback, the follow-up email as well. And it will contain a link to YouTube for the recording and for those of you who were unable to join today. And it will also include the link to the ebook. So thank you, everybody, for being on. Thank you for commenting, for being engaged. I will see you December 1st at the latest, and maybe before that on another webinar. It's not published yet, but stay tuned. We'll have it out there very soon. Mina, thank you also. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. This concludes the Culture Mastery webinar on Global Success Strategies, November 12th. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.